Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Phillip and I'm gonna explain you a little bit about things that changed in Gen 7. Now most importantly, the things to note are gonna be spoilers. Little of this is directly confirmed by Nintendo, however it is confirmed by the people who actually own the game right now. In sense of there are a lot of these groups and there are a lot of these that are confirming data back and forth, so that pretty much confirms it fairly solidly. Um, some of these changes will be important for the metagame, as well as certain new Pokemon, as well as certain new moves and whatever. And I'm going to be going over most of these, as well as going to tell you my own personal opinion, as well as going to link down a list below that I'm currently working on, or might link that down below, about sets for potential new LC threats that will be either low or middle or very, very good. Most important one is gonna be fletchling, and I'm saying this because it's fletchling. Fletchling scale wing got nerfed, and I don't see why. This is the only nerf that isn't directly on this list, which you can look at while I'm gonna be speaking to you. Fletchling's Gilwing is, as well as Talonflame's Gilwing and Fletchlinder's Gilwing, is nerfed, and because of that, it can only use Flying type priority at 100%. This essentially boils down to a Pokemon, aka Fletchling, not being able to use Gilwing Acrobatic or Gilwing Roost, or ever Gilwing Roost, that's the thing. Never gonna be able to use Gilwing Acrobatic again, and that is a massive, massive downside for its utility. As for Talonflame, Talonflame can't use Brave Bird anymore with this set, making Flame Body the best set right now. Frigate can use Big Backs again with Fletchling on me. No, I don't think Fletchling will see much more utility thanks to that, because it needs Stealth Rocks removed from the field. It's immune to every hazard, so that's a positive. It can't switch into any attack ever again, so it can't switch into a Meanfus Drain Punch. It already had issues switching into that, but right now it can't even ever. It needs hazards removed even more than Larvesta needs them removed. It becomes very dependent by it, and Fletchling already isn't exactly the most blessed in that regard. Its defenses aren't that good. It already needed to utilize a bulkier spread just to take a hit, and now it never will be able to take a hit. So the offensive set with Overheat will be better. The downside of that set is it's bad to begin with. A lot of things, you can't set up Swords Dance anymore, essentially, because the moment they hit you, your ability is gone. And there are no Pokemon in LC that just use status moves. Any kind of weather condition, being hail, sand, would ruin you. Any status condition like poison would ruin you, or something along those lines. Just so many things to ruin that Pokemon, and it by itself being removed means one of our strongest priority users has been removed. Now there is another rumor that I actually have not checked yet. I don't really think it's that important, though it will affect Bisharp and Ponyard primarily. Sucker Punch has been dropped from 80 to 70 base, but I'm not going to go more in depth about that because because that is not confirmed. I have not checked that yet, but even if that was the case, I definitely think some bars about Ponyard will be weaker, and a lot more things will become potential rules on if the damage will be enough, the damage won't be enough, maybe needs more Stealth Rocks, because Ponyard previously was able to primarily just use a combination of knockoff plus Sucker Punch, and that would knock out the vast majority of Pokemon. And right now it can't use that anymore. I mean, it will still be able to effectively use it, because if you look at the calcs, the majority of those Pokemon are still easily KO'd. One of the first debunks I will do is Eviolite has not been nerfed. I don't see why people still believe that, and I really don't understand why people keep believing rumors like that, as if they have to nerf it. The only thing that surprised me that they had absolutely no reason to nerf it was Gengar. And that apparently has Cursed Body instead of Levitate right now. Don't know why, but it does. It now does. It doesn't have Levitate anymore. That's pretty much the only thing I can say. Gengar itself is known as a shadow Pokemon, as well as it sits on the ground, so I guess it's more of a logical change, because I'm seeing it more like that. Raikou, Entei, and Suicune have now obtained Inner Focus as hidden ability, which makes me think their hidden ability will probably be freed, but I'm not going to be going into too much about doubles. This will be for another video as well. The most important things to wrap around this list is that those things exist, and I'm going to point primarily to Slush Rush. Slush Rush, as odd as it sounds, is essentially the equivalent to a Hail variation of Swift Swim, Sand Rush, or Chlorophyll. Those abilities boost your speeds to +2 essentially under those weather conditions. It doesn't actually boost, it just doubles your speed. So say you already had a +6 boost, it would double that even. But that's a good thing actually. Pokemon like Cubchoo and also Alolan Sandshrew have obtained this ability right now. That is really cool. I'm happy they finally did that, because Hail has been, how do I say this, absolute dog shit. While I do think Mambo's his Hail team, as well as my video that I did about Hail, that Hail isn't actually that bad. It definitely isn't the best weather condition. In LC, it would be somewhat excuse me, somewhat arguable that it's actually quite viable, but is not viable compared to, say, Sand on defensive spectrum, Sun on offensive spectrum, and Rain on literally every spectrum, because that is Rain. Also, Fletchling is now not going to be able to check Sun anymore as reliably, and all those kind of things. So all of that combined, Fletchling will just be much less now, much less useful. They can still use Priority Tailwind, I guess, to put up that, and then use something like no, that would still be. Oh, that sucks so much. The Slush Rush is quite interesting. It's going to be helpful for certain Pokemon. I even made a list like this. The first Pokemon I'm going to be talking about in this list is going to be the starters, Rowlet. Now let me actually sit a little bit better. So, as I was saying with Rowlet, what is there to say about Rowlet? Rowlet's stats, these stats translate into essentially 15 or 16 attack. It is a 16 attack because I have Adamant Nature. HP, that is essentially 23 HP, or 25. 65, that's about the equivalent of what Vullaby has. Vullaby. I invested how much in that? 172. Okay, that's 23 HP essentially. That's quite decent, I guess. There isn't really much to put in perspective for that, I think. Like, is there a lot to say about that? I don't think so. Is that 25 HP? Now I'm doubting myself. I think that is 25 HP. I'm actually gonna calculate that out as well. We take Unknown for whatever reason. I'm gonna put it level 5, I'm gonna put it 68 HP and 176. Something, yeah, that's 25. Even though that's not the actual number. 72. 25 HP. That's actually quite decent. Its defenses will be, with this spread, translate to. I don't even know. I don't even know right out of my head. Sorry. I'm gonna give these numbers in. Gonna go to 6. Okay, so that's 25 HP, 12 defense, 12 special defense, 16 physical attack, and 10 speed. Or with this invested, that is 10 speed still. 10 speed, still 10 speed. 42. Drop all of that. That's 10 speed plus 20, so that's 11 speed. That's gonna be able to outspeed. Timber is gonna be able to speed high. 11 speed Porygon, Pumpkaboo, as well as Pancham, which are the only real relevant 11 speed Pokemon as far as I can think of right out of my head. Now, the most important thing to think about with Rowlet is the fact that it has a very amazing offensive combination within Brave Bird and Leaf Blade. Now, on top of that, this Pokemon has reliable recovery in Roost, has access to Swords Dance because it's a grass type Pokemon, and has access to Defog, which is great in the LC metagame to begin with, but the main thing you're going to look at is there exists Vullaby. And that is your primary thing you're going to be concerned about. It also gets Battle Pass, which is another great thing. Brave Bird is gonna be the most important thing in order to deal with fight type Pokemon. I can call this thing somewhere around C plus even. The reason why I'm saying that is because this is actually really good offensive coverage that really doesn't allow that many Pokemon to just come in. I could even look up Rowlet, his move pool. That's actually pretty decent coverage overall. It has some other options within this. I don't think most of those are worth it. I wish. Oh, it gets Nasty Plot as well. Interesting. It gets Sucker Punch. It gets other moves as well. I don't really think most of these other options will be that much worth it. I definitely think that, say, it removes its flying type with Roost is going to be more helpful than, say, Synthesis, as well as having more PP can be useful. Not going to be hindered by a weather condition is also going to be useful because we're going to get a Alolan Vulpix who has Snow Warning. Spoilers ahead. That's going to be a little bit relevant, but that means we have three Hail Setters in the LC metagame. We have one Sun Setter. We have one Sand Setter and 3 Hail Setters. That is ridiculous because we still don't have a Drizzle user. As you can see, Pelipper got Drizzle, which is really freaking cool, to say the least. This thing actually will be very viable in OU. We have Torkoal in the PU tier right now. At one moment it was still NU combined with Muk for whatever goddamn reason. It should have dropped long ago. This thing got Sandstream, and this thing got Snow Warning. So that's all the weather conditions. We have an extra setter for that. This was a PU Pokemon, this was a PU Pokemon, this was a PU Pokemon, and this was like PU/NU-ish. I'm still seeing it like PU/NU because it's in between those, depending on how useful it is. Same counts for Barnyard. It also got a little bit of a boost, but that's irrelevant for right now. I keep getting out of subject because there's so much stuff to talk about. I'm very sorry for that. But I definitely think this Pokemon will be relevant. Having access to Swords Dance, Nasty Plot, Sucker Punch, Leaf Blade. I'm even going to edit this. I definitely think these coverage options are useful. For those wondering, yes, I'm using ad block. I don't quite like ads, and if you're gonna complain about that, get out, please. Long Reach is a new ability. It essentially means you can't be affected by physical contact making side effects like iron barbs, recoil, flame body. That's really cool, by the way, because fire types are still a great switch into this Pokemon, and flame body is now no longer in effect. That is great. The main downside I see is that this thing is still walled by particularly Pawniard, but also other steel type Pokemon like Ferroseed, not as much, but also Magnemite, as well as other Pokemon. But overall, this thing seems very very, very versatile, very niche with a lot of things. The ability is very, very helpful, but it's not that good. For this particular Pokemon, it will definitely be a help, but not all that good compared to say Bulletproof on Chespin. That is definitely gonna be relevant. Now we have Litten. Litten, I have no idea what to make of a set for this thing. I literally made every single set. We have Intimidate, which is his hidden ability, with Berry Juice, which got Flare Blitz, Substitute, Flame Charge, and Swords Dance. I couldn't think of anything better because this thing doesn't have any coverage to really make it work. It doesn't even get knockoff, which is a very big depressing thing, which also has not been nerfed. Then we're gonna look at Litten, who with this set is gonna be a much more fast utility mon. I even put a full description in it. Just pause the video if you want to read that thing. Sorry. Fire Blast, Empower Grass, Will-O-Wisp, U-Turn. There's a lot of utility options, not all that much that's really gonna put in any work because this thing is just so irrelevant. Like, I did rather just use a Torchic with Fire Blast and Empower Grass and Will-O-Wisp with Baton Pass instead of U-Turn. I'd much rather just use Swords Dance Torchic. That would instantly get a speed boost, so I don't need to use Flame Charge. I can use Fire Blast on that, can use Substitute on that, can use Will-O-Wisp on that same set, and would be able to use Baton Pass. It doesn't get Taunt, I guess that's something, but then again we have Chimchar as well, so I don't see your point. Then this is a Nasty Paw set. This is outclassed by freaking Pancham, actually. The only difference is Intimidate over Blaze, essentially what gives it an edge over Pancham, but it's still like what. Then we have Piplup. Forgot to change the name of the Pokemon that I used it for in terms of implementation. That's quite funny. Poplio. Poplio is not all that good as you might expect it. It has like 17 special attack, 23 HP, 14 defense, 12 special defense, and 10 speed with this very spread. I ran Hyper Voice with Liquid Voice. Liquid Voice is essentially speaking a weaker version of what would be seen like a Refrigerate or a Pixelate, an 8 ability. It's like Normalize. Normalize would be the best comparison. Normalize does not actually boost normal type moves. It just changes every move into a normal type move. Well, Liquid Voice changes every normal type move into a water type move. So Hyper Voice will be essentially the strength of Surf, but will be able to hit past substitutes. That's actually quite useful, but I don't really value that all that much. Does this thing even get Hydro Pump? I assume it does. Yeah, it does. Okay, so it's gonna be able to get that by breeding or by Ag move. It gets Hydro Cannon, which is even more irrelevant to say the least. I'm gonna assume someone is gonna be running the and shoot voice thing. Probably is. I don't value that at all. I think that's one of the more pathetic things, if I'm gonna say it like that. Water plus Fairy is great coverage overall because it's quite neutral, but still is walled by Fungus primarily and some other Pokemon that are gonna be less notable, but primarily Fungus, and that's a big issue. You essentially invite Pokemon like Chinchou, and overall this thing doesn't have much going for it. It's just a generic water type and doesn't even have the coverage to truly make it shine. Then we go to Pikipek. Now Pikipek is gonna be the second most relevant Pokemon in all of Lil Cup. Second most relevant flying type in all of Lil Cup. The other one being Dodrio, who I would without a doubt think is gonna be the most relevant flying type perhaps besides Vullaby, but I definitely think it's going to be relevant. Piggyback has access to Skill Link. Now, what does Skill Link do? Multi-hit moves. Bullet Seed, Fury Pack will always hit 5 times. Say it had Bone Meringue, that would hit twice. That would hit twice anyway. What kind of argument was that? It got like Icicle Crash. Icicle Crash would hit 5 times, like Shelter has with Skill Link. But Fury Attack is essentially a very weak move actually. I don't really think it's all that good of a move, but it's decent. You can use Brave Bird. This thing gets Brave Bird. That is very important. I hope it got like either Drill Peck or Brave Bird. Either of those would have made this thing work. Drill Peck just means it needs to run Life Orb. Brave Bird means it can also run Choice Scarf, which it currently can. If you want to run Choice Scarf on this, you are free to do so. I definitely think Choice Scarf is a good option for this Pokemon. Let me edit that real quick. Brick Break is a great coverage option because it hits Pokemon like Ponyard, also Magnemite. Bullet Seed essentially hits Chinchou, Hippo, and many other Rock-type Pokemon like Onix for massive damage. Also Pokemon like Tortuga are hit extremely hard by this, and this makes this Pokemon shine even past Doduo in many ways. It also gets Swords Dance, who, spoilers right now, Doduo also gets that. But overall, this thing has 17 speed, 17 attack, if including the speed nature, however. Absolute shit HP that is actually, if you drop it by 2 IVs, it's going to be able to hit the 19 HP line, which essentially means you only take 1 HP per recoil from Life Orb, which is pretty solid actually. It just means you are frail as shit. But because our primary priority user is down, which was also its main competitor, this thing is now relevant. This thing will be relevant. I actually think this is going to replace where Doduo is right now ranked at like B, and Doduo is going to fill where Fletchling is ranked right now at A+. Because Doduo has practically no switch-ins, honestly. It's a really good poke. It has like 18 speed, which is the most primary thing to keep in mind about that. Fury Pack is going to be pretty weak overall, but it's going to hit a certain group of Pokemon quite hard. If you don't want recoil, that's also a thing, but downside is the accuracy. And you kind of get my point. Then we're going to go to Cutiefly. Now look no further. This is, I think, going to be the single most relevant new threat in all of Lil Cup. Doduo got like a buff. It's an old Pokemon, but it's not a new threat. This thing is gonna be very important. This thing gets access to Quiver Dance, has the Fairy Bug typing, which is beautiful to say the least. It has access to some very niche abilities, I guess that's alright, but also gets Bend Pass, gets reliable recovery, gets access to many useful coverage options, for example Psychic, primarily Psychic actually. But other options, for example running Draining Kiss combined with Substitute stat, as well as its really good just stats. It has 19 speed if you invest in the speed nature and max invest that. It takes 244 speed investment. I'm running 248 because Random Power Fire I want to include in this set as well, so you don't just mass up the EVs. This Pokemon has 15 special attacks, so this is our fast special attacking Pokemon, aka don't even bother using Cottonee for that set anymore because it's just irrelevant, as if it wasn't already. This thing is more powerful, this thing is better overall because it also has better Fairy Stab. just what else could it have? It has the best of the bug typing, best of the fairy typing. It has a great combination because bug plus fairy, as odd as it may sound in LC, is actually really freaking useful if you think about it. Having access to roost, it has reliable recovery, so it doesn't get worn down by stealth rocks anymore. Because Fletch is being nerfed, that means Quiver Dance can go all free out essentially. If you get up Stealth Rocks, this thing essentially has only a handful of real switch-ins. It also gets Energy Ball, but I don't really value that because not many Pokemon... I guess I can smack Energy Ball in this set as well. I definitely don't think it's going to be all that relevant. Actually, I might be wrong with that. I definitely don't think Cutify won't be relevant. It definitely has options in multiple directions with the Battle Pass set, or a bulkier set I should say, as well as an offensive set. Overall, this thing has almost everything that it could possibly need. Psychic, for example, is powerful, like really, really powerful against Pokemon like Fungus. Hidden Power Ground is gonna hit Magnemite. Ponyta is gonna even 2-hit KO Ponyta if Stealth Rocks are up. Hidden Power Fight is Fire. It's gonna 2-hit KO Ferroseed. As well as still decently damage certain other steel types like Magnemite. But also hits a select few other Pokemon as well. Bug Buzz to hit past substitutes, that's mainly your go-to thing. Maybe Stallbreaker God is gonna be much more boring. I definitely think God is gonna be much more oppressed by the current metagame because this seems offensive, and I'm not even talking about the Z moves yet. Because the Z moves, if I think about the Z moves, there isn't really all that much to talk about. I think a lot of them will be banned by Evasion Clause, but some of them, specifically moves like Conversion 2's Z move, are gonna be massively relevant because they raise every stat by 1 if you use that move, because that's a status move and it has like a really nice side effect. But I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later. It has got a few other options, but most of those are gonna be shit. Mudbray doesn't have a lot of coverage. Like the main thing that I actually like about Mudbray is the fact that it just has massively high stats. Like look at this HP, look at this attack, look at this defense. To compare, that's Hippo HP, Hippo defense, Hippo special defense, even slightly more than that. Better than Hippo being speed, even better than Hippo being special attack. Now, still, compared to Hippo, Hippo doesn't have, Hippo has reliable recovery into Slack Off. This thing doesn't. This thing also has Trapinch level attack, aka the 4th most powerful Pokemon in the metagame by raw base attack. That is massive. It has Earthquake, Rock Slide, some fight type moves like Superpower, Close Combat, but it also has Bulldoze, lower speed, so that's pretty useful, I guess. It has Rest and Sleep Talk as its only way of actual recovery, so I think this thing will be relevant. B-/B, this is my expectation because this thing is actually quite relevant thanks to Stamina, which boosts your defense by +1. If you are hit by a contact making move, making this thing even more reliable than Hippo at dealing with flying types. What a mouthful. I'm quite tired of constantly rambling all these kind of things, but this thing is relevant. I'm primarily going to be running the Restock sets at the early start of the metagame because this thing seems really, really good. Marini. This is a poison water type with Regenerator, massively useful stats in terms of defense. This is not that big compared to other Pokemon. For example, if I look at Slowpoke, Slowpoke actually has better numbers. Like, if you invest it differently, it has better numbers. But if you compare it to what Slowpoke actually uses these things for, because its main problem was getting rid of the weakness to knockoff for this Pokemon, well, this Pokemon actually has still got the resistance to fight, but doesn't have the weakness to knockoff. It also has Merciless, which is a new ability that essentially means you will always crit opponent if the opponent is poisoned, meaning moves like Venoshock. Because you're going to be able to set up toxic spikes, you're going to have a firm niche over even Screlp thanks to that. You have viable recovery besides Regenerator, that's also important, because Slowpoke actually ran Slack off, even though it had Regenerator, but that was kind of a shitty thing. Like, you don't even need to have Slack off on Slowpoke. It just was helpful in few situations. Well, right now, this thing has recovery, in the form of Recover. It has Scald, it has Venoshock, Sludge Wave, excuse me. It has Toxic Spike, so it can set up spikes. It's not as powerful as Skrelp, but it has 13 special attack, if I remember correctly. Or 12, or 11. 35, that's about 11, I think. That's 11. Overall, a really relevant Pokemon, if you ask me. At first glance, a bad Skrelp. Second glance, a bad Fungus. Third glance, a bad Slowpoke. But you get the point. However, it does have some edge over essentially what I already said. Berry Juice set can be pierced as well. Yeah, the Berry Juice set of Munchlax, for example, is actually hit. With a chance to one-hit KO, if I remember correctly, thanks to Merciless and the power of Venoshock combined with the strength of poison on the opponent. That is a mouthful, but this thing can actually do that with just setting up Toxic Spikes and making use of this thing. Of that. This thing seems relevant, and this thing might actually be somewhat relevant, but I'm not going to do a guess as to how high, because this thing is quite controversial in regards of what it actually does. It's also trapped by Pokemon like Gothita and Diglett, and those are going to be relevant still. Alolan Sandshrew, it got a slight increasement in its stats, like 5 more defense, 5 more special defense, and that's actually the only thing that changed. It has Slush Rush, so it's going to be a Hail Sweeper. You can also run a support set with Rapid Spin, I think. It still has that. Oh, excuse me. Sandshrew 1, yeah. Okay, Grip Claw. That's an item, right? Huh. I'm not sure as to what Grip Claw does. I might need to look into that for a little moment, but for all I care right now, that's actually quite good to just see that it has Slush Rush. I think it still has Rapid Spin. I am not very. It still has Rapid Spin. It also gets access to strong Iron type moves. Excuse me, Steel type moves in the form of Iron Head. It has Swords Dance. It has Icicle Crash, which is probably one of the most important parts about this Pokemon. Where is Icicle Crash? That is very weird. The other guy actually suggested this thing does obtain Icicle Crash. And if it doesn't actually obtain Icicle Crash one way or another, that sucks balls. That really sucks balls. Okay, I need to relook into that. That is fucked up. Like the other guy, the other list suggested it did obtain Icicle Crush. If this list contradicts that, then that really freaking sucks. Like it obtained Earthquake, it obtained not that many moves actually, but Icicle Crush was on that list. If it doesn't, that really hampers down a lot of its utility, because that's its primary stab to abuse. It's just not there. Man, that's depressing for this Pokemon. That actually is. Jesus. That actually sucks. That actually sucks. I'm gonna re-look into that because that seems to be a flaw in the previous list. But if that's the case, then forget Sandshrew even, then just go straight to Cupshoe. Like straight up, like why would I not use Cupshoe then? Cupshoe actually had a very tiny niche in the form of play rough over Sandshrew, but if it doesn't even get that, then what? Why? Why would you? Man, that sucks. Head. Iron Tail was probably an import mistake. Man, that actually sucks. Alone Vulpix has Freeze Dry, Blizzard, Moonblast, and with Hidden Power Fight it actually has perfect coverage. It, however, only has 14 special attack, same as regular Vulpix. It doesn't get a damage boost, unlike Vulpix in Sun. Blizzard is powerful, but not powerful enough to, I think, like wall break. Man, that actually sucked for Alone and Sandshrew. Wow. That really sucks. Then we go to Alone Grimer. Or Grimmer, as you can say. This thing, it might be one of the coolest things to replace what is currently Stunky, and I will definitely use this thing on teams. Its hidden ability is the Power of Alchemy, which essentially means if a Pokemon faints, that Pokemon will now obtain it. Like, it's, compare it a bit to Mummy. Compare it to Mummy, but then if you faint, you obtain that ability. This Pokemon has Pursuit as a new move. It has Knockoff. It still has Thief. It still has Gunk Shot. It still has Memento, Explosion, Shadow Sneak, but it doesn't have the Elemental Punches anymore, and that's probably gonna be the most stinging thing about it, in my opinion, because Fire Punch is nice. It doesn't get that anymore. That's quite sad. So I kinda see why you need to use Fire Blast now. But this thing is gonna replace a lot of utility of Stunky, so that Stunky now only really does a combination, still does a combination, but it doesn't do it as effectively anymore as this thing could do. Berry Juice is still nice. Pursuit is still going to be able to just trap Pokemon like Abra. It's not like they're going to hurt you because you even have much better stats than Stunky to compare, so they won't do any damage. Then we go to Alolan Diglett. This part is probably what was the most offsetting for me. Its loss of Arena Trap was massive, but losing 1 point of speed makes this thing have no use. I wanted to originally say this thing is able to outclass the current set of like Sand Sweeping regular Diglett with Sand Force, because that's a Sand Abuser, and that's actually quite decent because it actually 2-hit KOs practically anything. Except for, I don't even remember what Pokemon it didn't 2-hit KO, but there was only like one Pokemon. But that's really cool. And then we look at this thing. Thing is a Steel Ground type, by the way. It sucks balls. It only has 18 speed. It's insuperior in any kind of way to Sandforce regular Diglett. The Steel typing actually adds only one poke, Arcan. You 1-hit KO Arcan. That's the only single poke that you gain in any number of calculations compared to it, if you don't include Iron Head Flinch, because I can just as easily just use Rock Slide Flinches and just suggest it never misses, because it won't. Then we have Cupshoe. Now, if Sandshrew doesn't get Icicle Crush, this thing will actually be very relevant. It doesn't get Swords Dance, but it does have Flush Rush combined with pretty decent attack, Ice Punch, Play Rough, Superpower, and Hone Claws with potential setup. Not much to say. It's not all that powerful, all that fast, or all that bulky, but this thing could have a slight niche, I guess. Now Doduo. This is the last book I'm probably going to be talking about because, this is the last in the list. Doduo now has Jump Kick. On top of that, it now has Swords Dance. Fletchling is nerfed. What else could this thing possibly have obtained? Nothing. Nothing. except for baby grass coverage. If that was the case, then this thing even outclassed Piggyback, which it doesn't right now. Certain Pokemon, for example, say Onyx or whatever, or Tuga even, with the defensive set, I think it still takes it if it doesn't use Life Orb, like a Choice Scarf set. This thing also only has like 18 speed, so 90 speed Pokemon are still going to be able to outspeed it. Its coverage, what was previously just Brave Bird, Double Edge, and Knockoff, was already enough to break through the majority of the metagame by itself. Hidden Power Fight essentially means even Ponyard can't really switch in on it anymore. It essentially takes too much damage from the first time and then just switches out and just comes in again, and then it just can continue to break anything because even Ponyard dies after that because Hidden Power Fight did enough for the next move to essentially one hit KO the remaining amount of HP. There isn't a lot to deal with this thing in terms of faster Pokemon like Abra. It's going to be somewhat relevant, but you have Quick Attack, so that's even threatening for Abra if it's Focus Sash. If it's Life Orb, then I guess you can still fire it off. As for Brave Bird, it's going to be able to do massive amounts of damage. Double Edges, massive amounts of damage. Jump Kick is going to hit any kind of steel or rock type that every team already needed to have to begin with to deal with Fletchling. Knockoff is going to be able to get past whatever kind of Eviolite or Berry Juice user that might come into this thing, as if it doesn't already break enough, this thing will make it break. If that's not enough, it can also run Swords Dance and just get to +2 and then ensure it kills something. Now I also made this spread. This spread essentially means it can theoretically take a hit, but its defenses are so bad it actually shouldn't be able to take any hits. I can show you the stats of this thing. 20 HP, 11 defense, and 10 special defense. Just to compare, you need like 22 base HP, 12 physical defense, and 11 special defense in order to theoretically tank a hit and then continue to fire it off again. In combination with Berry Juice, not Eviolite. I just think Eviolite will be lesser option for this particular part. Berry Juice is going to be very useful for the durability of Brave Bird spam, use of Substitute, and even Double Edge recoil. It can also use Roost if you prefer, but I don't see why you would use that on a Life Orb set. On the Eviolite set, I guess. With the Choice Scarf set, just run Brave Bird, Return, Knockoff, and Jump Kick. Maybe Double Edge over Return, but this is primarily what you should have with Choice Scarf. With the Life Orb sets, Quick Attack actually does like massive amounts of damage. It does like 50% against Choice Scarf Chinchou, which is actually pretty decent. But that's pretty much all the Pokemon that right now I've prepared. I need to look more into Alone Sandshrew, but overall, you essentially get the point. Yeah. The metagame's looking good. The metagame's gonna look really good. Type Null is gonna be LC eligible if it's obtainable below level 5, which we doubt. We don't think we're gonna be able to obtain that Pokemon at all, in fact. We don't think it's gonna be obtainable at all. It seems like it though. It seems like it's not going to be obtainable at all. That's quite stupid, honestly. We don't even know if the I don't even know if the legendary Pokemon are going to be as easily obtainable as previously, because I haven't spoiled myself as much with the story element of the game, and I'm not gonna spoil anyone with that because that's actually something that I just don't see why I would spoil that. You should just wait for the game for that. I don't see it's out there just on the internet if you just look for it, but I don't want to spoil myself too much with that. I have spoiled myself a little bit, but I'm not gonna spoil anyone else with that. But I hope you like this information. I'm gonna do a little bit of a discussion about doubles, like High Horse, the utility of that, because we haven't really had a strong ground type attack, and I'm gonna not a strong single target ground type attack, I should say, or I should quote. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's going to be helpful, and I'm going to work on some other stuff as well, like looking up Alone Sandshrew and why it doesn't.